Eu sou o Roberto Ardengue, sou presidente do Instituto Brasileiro de Petróleo e Gás e estamos aqui junto com a CNI nessa atividade. A ideia hoje aqui nossa é fazermos um debate, uma discussão, né? Como é que as organizações globais de óleo e gás, elas estão se alinhando ou alinhadas com os objetivos do Acordo de Paris. Esse é o principal objetivo que a gente tem hoje aqui, né? Para alguns de vocês que estavam aqui hoje de manhã, nós tivemos uma importante sessão hoje de manhã aqui na COP mesmo, onde nós discutimos questões ligadas à descarbonização. Mais ligada, na verdade, à cooperação para atingir objetivos de descarbonização. A nossa indústria ela tem contribuído de maneira maciça à descarbonização das nossas atividades e nesse debate lá a gente fez sobre exatamente como é que isso pode se dar do ponto de vista da descarbonização. Quando eu estava lá escutando e participando do debate, me ocorreu, né, que como é importante esse tema da cooperação e como as organizações internacionais são importantes para apoiar, para potencializar exatamente essa descarbonização, né? O papel das nossas organizações para que a gente possa atingir os objetivos do Acordo de Paris são muito importantes, né? A gente que é cética, né, com relação a essa questão das discussões ou os debates globais, né, como esse aqui que está acontecendo na COP, né? Mas eu queria lembrar a vocês dois exemplos que eu acho que ilustram bastante o que a gente já pode fazer olhando um pouco as lições do passado, né? A primeira delas é como a gente conseguiu evoluir na questão do combate dos gases que estavam colocando em perigo a chamada camada de ozônio, né? Que foi uma iniciativa de muitos anos atrás, que contou com a cooperação importante dos países e hoje esse problema está praticamente solucionado. Inclusive a camada de ozônio hoje está em franca recuperação. Mesma coisa aconteceu, por exemplo, quando a gente discutiu asbesto, né? O asbesto, não sei que todos sabem, é um produto que era usado para a produção de telhas, né? Para cobertura em muitos países do mundo, né? E ele tem características de causar especialmente câncer de pulmão nas pessoas que manipulam esse produto. Essa foi também uma iniciativa internacional, né? Então o CFC e o asbesto eu acho que nos dão um pouco a lição e esses dois instrumentos internacionais que, claro, foram discutidos nos fóruns apropriados, eles tiveram a participação muito efetiva, muito importante da indústria. As empresas colocaram-se na frente, apoiaram os governos e o resultado positivo dessas duas negociações em termos de combater tanto a diminuição da camada de ozônio quanto a questão do combate aos efeitos do asbesto na saúde das pessoas. Eu acho que são dois exemplos interessantes que a gente tem. E aí eu acho que isso aí se insere um pouco quando a gente fala em cooperação, quando a gente fala em descarbonização e o papel das nossas organizações. E nós temos aqui muita alegria hoje de ter uma presença muito importante das entidades principais do nosso setor. Nós vamos ter aqui a Arpel, vamos ter a IPECA, vamos ter a IOGP, vamos ter a ODCI e finalmente uma empresa que é uma referência do setor, que é a ExxonMobil. Eu gostaria então de iniciar essa apresentação chamando a doutora Fay Gerard para que possa subir aqui, porque ela vai fazer uma apresentação com alguns slides e depois a gente monta o painel para que todos possam nos acompanhar. Doutora Fay, por favor. The floor is yours.
Good hot afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and pleasure to be here today. My name is Dr. Fay Gerard. I am the Energy Transition and America's Director for IOGP, which is the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers. So what I'd like to do, first of all, I'm honored to be here on the panel. So thank you for having me here, and thank you for listening to this presentation of my esteemed panelists, which will come later. So we're going to discuss a bit about, we'll start back at COP26. There was a 2021 agreement during COP26 to reduce methane emissions by 30% by 2030. So I want to describe just what IOGP is. We'll talk about how IOGP has been around for over 50 years. We have almost 100 members and access to almost 2,800 technical expertise. So what is the job of IOGP? Fundamentally, we are here to bring the collective expertise of the industry to solve what our common problems are, and also to ensure that the oil and gas industry produces safely, responsibly, and efficiently, and of course with the lowest carbon footprint. So IOGP focuses on environmental, we focus on safety, engineering and standards, and the latest focus area is energy transition. So the Energy Transition Directorate has two committees. One is the Low Carbon and Operational Efficiency, and the second committee is this Carbon Capture and Storage Committee. We have 5 expert groups, so we have experts within those two committees, and we also have access to 250 SMEs. And what this group does is we help put together publications for to be used throughout the industry. They're available for free use for all. If you have a cell phone, you can scan the QR code, and that's where all of our publications reside. We call this the Energy Transition Integrated Framework. So the Energy Transition Integrated Framework is a tool that has 5 focus areas. One is methane, flaring and vent, energy efficiency, electrification, and carbon capture and storage. It also includes a 6th category, which is that burgundy category, called alternative fuels, recognizing that this is a good and an important part of the decarbonization journey. So the support on the progress being made on addressing our industry challenges to effectively implement the global agreement to reduce emissions by 30% by 2030 is where these tools come into play. So there is, I'll tell everyone this, there's no one solution to drive decarbonization, but there is access to publications that can help you on your journey. What I'd like to do is, give you an example of some progress that's been made within IOGP and our membership. So earlier this year, our members got together for a methane roundtable, I'll call it, in which we sat down with the members of our company, our association, and we talked about the successes and challenges of methane detection, quantification, and abatement technologies. And what we came up with, sorry about that, what our common goal is to share experiences, our lessons learned on methane emission technologies and abatement. And we came up with 4 summary points. So I'm going to give you 4 summary points, and I'm going to give you 5 focus areas. The first summary point on our experiences together was around upstream oil and gas sector has made some progress, but it has not gotten where we need to be for reducing methane emissions. There's still work to be done. The second point I want to bring up is further reductions require a coordinated approach to reducing emissions. The third point is around integrate technical, operational, and collaborative strategies. They need to be integrated amongst us all. We have to collaborate because it takes more than just one company to solve this issue. And the fourth one is around reducing methane emissions does require an alignment on technologies, people, and processes. We have to share standards, we have to share learnings amongst ourselves, best practices to deliver this scalable and sustainable solution. So the 5 thematic areas, there we go, the critical steps to progress on methane action. There are There are 5 thematic areas for advancing emission detection. It's around standardized measurement and making sure that we reconcile our methodologies. It's something around making sure that we improve our provider performance and data quality. So in order to do methane detection and quantification, the performance needs to be consistent, and we do need to improve on our data quality. There's so much data out there. The third one is around making sure that you select the correct methane management tool. So there's access to multiple technologies, but which one is fit for purpose for your respective company based on your site specifically, site-specific, as well as what infrastructure you have in place. The fourth one is around internal collaboration, and that's internal collaboration with your operations teams as well as your stakeholders. So it can't be done just by a methane detection team and they sit separately. You do have to integrate with the operations team as well. And then finally, it's around fostering industry-wide collaboration. Knowledge sharing is key. What we found out in that roundtable is that when we don't share with each other what you're doing, the goods and the bads, the things that worked and the things that don't work, if you don't share those, it can cost money and it takes a lot of time to find detectable or detection technologies. So if you share what works, we felt around the roundtable, it helps out on this journey and it makes it a lot quicker. The next slide. So let's talk about methane and flaring reduction collaborations. I'll talk about a few today. So one collaboration I'd like to talk about first is the methane guiding principles. So methane guiding principles was retired in July of 2025 this year. And they retired because they had finished and done what they needed to do over the last 7 or 8 years. They retired, but the technical documents came into IOGP. And they reside on that integrated framework that I showed on the first slide. And you can access all of those documents through that QR code on the screen here. What they brought over to IOG from a technical document standpoint are best practices, our guidelines, there are case studies that have been brought over, master classes that were held by MGP, webinars, they're all in one place and they reside within IOGP. What we've looked at, and we have our methane expert group looking at within IOGP, is that we will look at some of those documents and make sure that those documents are still relevant and make sure that they're of beneficial use to the industry. And if there are any updates that need to be done, the methane expert group members will make sure that they're updated. We'll do it collectively. Second example of a collaboration is the recommended practice for methane emission detection and quantification technologies and the associated online technology filtering tool. So we've developed this tool in collaboration with OGCI, IPECA, as well as Energy Institute. So you'll hear more from OGCI and you'll hear more from IPECA later on during this panel session. So we worked collectively together to come up with this framework on how to implement combinations of measurement, detection, and quantification technologies for onshore and offshore assets to facilitate improved methane management and emission reporting. So what happens is you're given multiple options. You put in what your operating conditions are, and what it will give you an output on are the best available technologies for your particular condition. In that tool, it's over 75 technologies that are in there, and you'll also get access to the databases that go along with them. So I would encourage you all, if you're interested in looking for methane detection and quantification technologies, try this selection tool, and you can try it under different conditions. It's not one time, you can just continue it. Talking about methane and flaring, which is very important cause, especially we're all here at COP talking about it. I would be remiss if I did not mention a very important piece of work and a collaboration that we did with Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter, OGDC. So what we did, we worked collectively together with EDF, with OGCI, IPICA, again, just to name a few. And we developed the Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter Methane Framework. The Methane Framework is a series of 3 one-page documents. It comes in 3 stages. It's the foundation, it's the reduction, and it's the continuous improvement. And what these documents do is they outline the suggested steps for operators to help you along on your methane detection and quantification and reduction journey. So we took about 400 documents that are out there, publications that are out there in the industry. We went through them all for you, and we put it into these one-pagers for each stage of your journey. So those one-pagers contain no more than 10 publications to get you where you need to start, starting. So it's not the one-all be-all, but it will start you on this journey. You can look at your foundation, where to start, starting with, do you need to look at your inventory of what's at your facilities? It goes into the point of reduction. How do you start your reduction or elimination even of methane from flaring activities, routine flaring activities? And also, how do you continuously improve? That's what these publications do. Again, another example of collaboration amongst our associations in this industry. So in summary, I'll share that transition can't be achieved by one sector or even one nation. It'll take us all working together. I believe the technology exists. I think that our pace is a bit slower, so we can pick that up by sharing our learnings and best practices with each other. I will say again, there's no one solution to drive decarbonization. Let's work together on this journey. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fay. It's very interesting, and I count that you mentioned collaboration 10 times. Thank you, because I think that's the key for our discussion today. So with great pleasure, let me invite to the podium Irene Alfaro from ARPEL. Please, Irene, come to us. Lorena Perez Barro from IPECA. Please, Lorena. Yeah, this way, yeah, okay. Born Otto Sverdrup. And finally, Chris Birdsall from ExxonMobil. Chris. Hello, how are you? Thank you very much for being with us today. And considering what we have already mentioned around the role that those organizations will play in terms of how we can achieve and get to the Paris Agreement demands. I will start with Irene. Irene, please. You have a microphone here? Oh, okay. Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Is it okay? Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank IBP in the first place for being here, for letting us be here, for inviting us. And it's a pleasure to share the panel with you all. In fact, we've been collaborating too for many years, so it's a great opportunity to share all the work we've done so far. Is it okay? ¿Se escucha bien?
We can hear you better.
Okay. Well, my name is Irene Alfaro. I'm the Senior Managing Director in ARPEL. ARPEL is the Regional Association of Oil, Gas and Biofuel sector in Latin America and the Caribbean. This year, it's our 60 years anniversary, so it's very important for us to share all the work we've done so far. Specifically talking about climate change and energy transitions, we created our first group of experts in ARPEL in 1999, even before the Kyoto Protocol was approved. So at the beginning, we started developing several technical guidelines on energy efficiency, helping our members to improve their energy management in their all the operations from upstream to downstream. And after that, we started developing executive reports as Arpel is an official observer to COPs. So every year we develop specific reports that summarize the impacts and the outcomes of each COP with regards to our sector in the region, all the implications every year, and focus on upper managers in our sector. We also developed, organized so far more than 30 technical workshops, some of them internal within our companies to share lessons learned and best experiences, but some of them also in collaboration with other organizations. Some of them are here, IOGP, IPECA, even OGCI in specific occasions. Some of them, to mention, with IPECA, we have the longest history of cooperation. I remember many years ago when we developed together a guideline on sulfur reduction in diesel, we also developed field tests on light vehicles emissions. And those guidelines were even taken as reference by the governments in several countries in our region too. We also focus our work at the beginning mainly on mitigation, but over the last 10 to 15 years we've been placing in an increasing focus on adaptation too, by developing also several workshops and trying to promote the implementation of adaptation plans in our companies and sharing experiences on that. We also, we are now placing a stronger focus on adaptation. In fact, we are now developing a tool to analyze several climate risks, both physical risk and transition risk, in order to help our companies manage and consider those risks within their corporate matrices. We are also working in cooperation with IETA on carbon markets, building capacity in our companies on all the market and non-market approaches that are increasingly appearing in our region. So we are preparing our companies to take advantages from this very valuable tool we have to fight climate change. We are also working hard on just energy transitions. 3 years ago, we developed a white paper that gathers the common understanding on what we think from the sector in the region is just energy transition. What it means for us in our region, in our reality. And thanks to this, the development of this white paper, we reach a common understanding on that, and we are now, from the publication so far over the last 3 years, we've been placing focus on opening a dialogue with external stakeholders to share our opinion with others, to understand other perspectives, and try to build a common roadmap that helps our region to have the right for sustainable development and to move forward with the energy transition in a just way. IBP is also one great example of cooperation. We've been members since, I don't know, more than 20 years. Yes, and we've been working very hard on specific activities in Brazil and also trying to articulate the region within Brazil with regards to all the sector topics. Well, and finally, regarding just energy transitions, I want to mention also that our companies are also sharing experiences, their first experiences in incorporating indicators on just energy transitions within their companies, because you have to measure. If you don't measure, you don't know if you are improving. And this is the first challenge we have, to find regional indicators that help our sector in the region to measure their improvements in just energy transitions. Well, I think that's the main points we are working on regarding energy transitions. I don't want to take more time and give the floor to the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene, for that. Yes, we have been with Sarpel for so many years. It's an amazing organization. Let me pass now the floor to Lorena Perez Barro from IPECA. Please, Lorena, you have the floor.
Good. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Very nice. Good. First of all, Roberto, thank you so much to you and IBP for inviting IPECA to this very good discussion and with very fantastic panelists and colleagues. So, if you don't mind, I would like to maybe introduce a little bit of who we are for those of you who don't know IPECA. So we are a non-lobby global oil and gas association. We were funded back in 1974 at the request of UNEP, the UN Environment Programme, to be the main channel of communication between the industry as a whole and the UN bodies. And at the beginning, our aim was mostly environmental and climate issues, but over these 51 plus years, we have extended our approach to address sustainability from a holistic perspective. So we are now looking not just at climate and environmental issues, but as well at social and sustainability issues, including supply chains of sustainability of supply chains. So maybe going to the topic that we are discussing today, I would like to mention two, I guess, key things for us. In 2022, we established what we call the IPECA principles, which are a set of principles that are requested for members to join us that are divided around our 4 strategic pillars of climate, nature, people, and sustainability. The first one responding to the support to one UN convention, and the second one explaining how we are operationalizing that with our members. And just to mention that the Paris Agreement is the very first one on this list of IPECA principles. And maybe alongside with the IPECA principles, I would like to mention that we map the 17 SDG goals against the oil and gas industry. We did this in collaboration with IFC, the International Finance Corporation, and UNDP. And we didn't stop there, and we launched the SDG roadmap in collaboration with WBCSD with the intention to highlight how the sector can maximize the contributions to the SDGs. So I will say that the IPECA principles and the SDGs roadmaps are the frameworks that through which IPECA are aiming to inspire actions and move ahead on this conversation. Mitigation, of course, is at the heart of what we are doing. And my colleague Faith and Irene, they have presented very good examples of what has been done. So if you don't mind, I would like maybe to focus on the broader sustainability spectrum and looking maybe at the product level and also the social aspects of this journey. And maybe starting with that, nearly 5 years ago, we established an alternative energy task force. And the aim of this group was a reflection of IPCA's member support to scale up alternative energies, but also with the intention to take all of the expertise gained by the oil and gas industry through all of these years and use that to support the sustainable scale-up of renewable energies. I mean, there are some basic principles that can be used and extrapolated to wind farms, for example, and taking from the lessons learned from oil and gas industries. So we did that at the beginning to exploring and mapping all of the IPCA's guidance and tools and to alternative energy task force technologies, looking mostly at wind and solar. And we are now collaborating with IUCN to develop a compendium of co-use strategies for wind farms. So this is on one hand. Then driving sectoral decarbonization is key to the energy transition. And we see that electrification and the change of the energy consumption is driving the demand for low carbon electrons, but there are some sectors very difficult to electrify. So technological and digital innovation, which I think you mentioned at the very beginning, are fundamental to reduce and accelerate the reduction of methane, of emissions. And so IPCA is an observer organization of the IMO, International Maritime Organization, since 1995, and the same for aviation, ICAO. We are newest on that space since 2021, but actively collaborating with them since 2019. And what we are doing with our members is to provide technical input and scientific knowledge to support their decarbonization strategies. So to use SAF, sustainable aviation fuels, as an example, we are supporting ICAO by providing technical input to assess and advance low carbon and sustainable aviation fuels for aviation, with the intention of making sure that the industry efforts are aligned with these international climate goals. A couple of more mentions on this. IPCA is also a founding member of UNEP PCFP, Partnership for Clean Fuels and Vehicles, who led to the elimination of leaded gasoline in 2021. It was a huge achievement globally, and now they are focusing on reducing the sulfur content of fuels, mostly in the global south. And something that I have been hearing a couple of times today, at COP28, it was launched the Industrial Transition Accelerator with the aim to supporting 6 high-emitting sectors to decarbonize, to explore what are the challenges and what are the opportunities to move them. So IPCA is part of the Leadership Council on that and is supporting by providing technical input and knowledge on this. So it's clear that by providing practical guidance, collaboration that has been shared a few times, but I believe is true and very, very necessary, and setting good practice, we are supporting our members, but also their industry to decrease the emissions from their operations, to develop low carbon solutions, but also to advance and share technologies that will be needed for the wider decarbonization of the industry. Now maybe go back to the IPCA principles and the fact that we are discussing all of the issues from a holistic point of view, right? Because you cannot isolate one issue and explore only from one angle, but also maybe reflecting on the COP30 mandates and focus on people and nature. The transformation, the transition to a low carbon future will need to be in a just and fair manner for workforces, for communities, but also for consumers. So mentioning that in IPCA we have a long-standing group working on social issues, from social performance to just transition, health in collaboration with IOGP, human rights and so on. And just this year we launched the 5th edition of our sustainability reporting guidance, with an updated module on social, and we updated with the just transition lenses. So what we did was to incorporate some just transitions indicators on this module, and we also include some just transition considerations into existing social and human rights indicators. Maybe building on that and thinking on the Paris Agreement and how transparency and reporting are keys. Clearly consistent and high quality sustainability reporting will be enablers of transparency, of performance improvements, and on engagement with key stakeholders. And in IPICA, we have been supporting the industry to produce high quality sustainability reports for over 20 years. We are doing this through our sustainability reporting guidance, but also through the organization of peer-to-peer workshops, webinars, and engaging with external stakeholders to understand what is happening out there. And now just transition, transparency, and reporting are topics that have been fortunately very, very relevant for the COPs during the last years. Being here in Belém, it's amazing to see how much importance is put as well onto nature. And I think this is essential. As said, no one issue can be explored in isolation. It should be explored from the broader spectrum. So in IPICA, we also have a very active group working on biodiversity and ecosystem services, on nature, on water. And in collaboration with OGCI, we develop natural climate solutions guidance, not with intention to, so natural climate solutions basically do not replace the need to reduce emissions, but can actually contribute significantly to achieve the aims of the Paris Agreement. So this guidance is aiming to manage high carbon stock ecosystems, and so supporting companies to understand a bit more how to conserve and restore those areas. And maybe two final remarks from my side. Irene has mentioned adaptation. Adaptation and resilience clearly is one of the key areas for the Paris Agreement as well. We have been working several years as well on this area. And since the last year, we are engaging again very actively, considering adaptation not just from carbon reduction or carbon intensity reduction, but also considering the environmental and social perspectives, so how some things can impact to communities and workforces. So maybe just finalizing here, I believe that not only innovation and not only science-based solutions are important, but collaboration between industry, between associations, between other sectors, but also externally and broadly are key to co-create solutions that then can be applied to different regions or more specifically locally.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and we're very happy to have IPICA with us. I will now give the floor to Born, because you run a very interesting session this morning with OGDC, OGCI. They organize a colloquium, a debate around decarbonization and cooperation. And how can you bring us to this debate about the role that you can play to this kind of cooperation? Because I think that cooperation is the key word that this morning and today.
It is, yeah. Thank you, Roberto, for inviting me. And is the sound working properly? Okay. So could I take a step back and say, why are we discussing this? In 1992, you had the Rio Earth Summit. Before that, 5 years before that, you had the report coming out on our common future. And this is, I think, where they introduced the topic of sustainable development. And one of that was to say you need a transition of the energy system. At that time, around 80% of the world's energy mix was based on fossil fuels. And if you look at the energy system today, around 80% is fossil fuels. So it shows that it doesn't mean that we haven't made any progress, but the population has grown, there's more people, there's more air condition, more people flying to climate meetings. We're using much more energy. And today, like it or not, more than 50% of the world's energy is consumed, is covered by oil and gas. And I don't think the applause was for that. But yes, and even the most recent scenarios that have been put out have actually suggested that that share may remain high for quite a long period of time. So I think when we met this morning, we kind of zoomed in on the importance of actually reducing emissions from how you operate and produce oil and gas. And try to do that as responsibly as possible is a very important thing. I can share with you some numbers because this really matters. So when the oil and gas industry worldwide is producing oil and gas, they use energy to do that. The total emissions from those operations is actually close to 10% of the world's total emissions. It's a whopping number. It's actually nearly all personnel cars, all shipping and or airplanes in the world. And half of that 5 gigatons is estimated to come from methane leaks. Basically loss of energy, loss of natural gas, either through cracks in pipes, open valves, poor turbines, failure to capture gas from storage tanks. So this is the opportunity. Can we bring those emissions down? And what we also talked about this morning is that it doesn't need to be this way. There are companies who have been able to bring those emissions to near zero. And here I'd like to take one more history. Because 10 years ago, a group of CEOs came together ahead of the Paris Agreement to see how could we show that even this industry is ready, will welcome an ambitious Paris Agreement and even be supportive and drive climate action inside the industry. They formed something called the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, where I'm lucky enough to be chair of the executive committee and oversee day-to-day. It consists of 12 of the largest oil and gas companies in the world. Exxon, Petrobras, BP, Shell, Equinor, also CNPC, Saudi Aramco, China as well. Since then, we have been working to share practices, invest in technologies, develop solutions. And the unique thing, I think, is it's a CEO-led group. The CEOs meet frequently. And it's been funny to watch it over time. I've been part of so many of those meetings. How a community has developed among those CEOs. Mindful of competition, of course. But a community, and I think they're inspiring each other to act on this. And are bold to drive actions inside their own companies. They also set collective ambitions. And the results have been quite remarkable. So since 2017, the methane emissions that we talked about has been reduced with 62%. Flaring down 70%, the routine flaring. Total CO2 emissions are down 24%, which equals taking off all the emissions of Norway, Sweden, Denmark and Finland. I come from Norway, so I picked that example. And we use a lot of energy to bring heat, right? No, what we, I think what we have done, encouraged by that progress, is that we also asked, what could we do more now to engage a bigger part of the industry? So that's why we worked together with Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the president of COP28, to see could we use that opportunity to literally broaden the tent, bring more companies in particular national oil and gas companies from emerging economies that had a completely different starting point without ESG investors and no less regulations, to come on board to say get started to address their emissions. And you know this, of course, but national oil and gas companies control around 60% of remaining oil and gas resources. So it's super important. And I promise you, they have an intention to develop their resources. And we were also very encouraged by a satellite program that we have been running, where we had been taking satellites, sophisticated satellite technology, spotted from space, where you found emissions, and basically knocking on doors at plants and factories and saying, look, do you know you have a problem? We have some data. Would you like to see them? Because we have a trouble over there, over at the German pavilion. So there's a leak. And very few put the door in our face. Most people approached us and said, oh, I didn't know that. Let me have a look. And we also offered the support to say, if you'd like to have drones or cameras to make this invisible gas visible and see it, we can support you in doing that. And the amazing thing is that when even companies in remote geographies, and when they get access to data, they get support. There was a remarkable willingness to act upon it. To me, the big turning point was we did this in Iraq. We found one plume, we call it a plume. It was 5 tons per hour. They were able to remove it within 2 months. We could see that through the satellite overflying. The volumes of methane leaks removed through that exercise alone was equal to the global total emissions of a European supermajor. So remarkable actions done. So we, inspired by that, we helped shape this coalition of group of OGDC with 55 companies. And now that's up and running. Big scale, covering 40% of the world's oil and gas production, 100 companies, 100 operations in 100 countries. And now, today, we actually launched the first or the second progress report of that work. And it's encouraging to see how many of those companies are still leaning in, supporting the initiative, better reporting of numbers, more sharing of data, more sharing of action plans. To me, that's very encouraging. And I think we just need, this industry just needs to get this job done by 2030. We've been talking about it, we have the practices, we have the solutions. I think it's time for action, and now I think we have a recipe to do that. And with the leadership of, Exxon is very keen on this and very supportive. I think we can get a lot of done over the next 60 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, a lot of challenges ahead, and now I'll pass to you, Chris, with your vision from a company the size and the importance of Exxon. How you see this work of these organizations, and how we can better maybe cooperate to support their missions.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, Roberto, and I'm really excited to be here in this panel. All of my colleagues to the right have been super helpful, not just for ExxonMobil, but for the industry as a whole in driving collaboration, action plans, and best practices, so thank you. I'll share a little bit about how ExxonMobil approaches this challenge, and we describe our strategy in how do we supply the energy and products that society needs and at the same time reduce emissions. And we have to do both of those together. It's incredibly challenging, but that's what it'll take to have a truly sustainable transition. And we look to the science to help guide us on what's needed. And so I'll start at the highest macro level, that if you look at the IPCC's last assessment report, the 6th assessment report, there's over 700 different pathways for the world to achieve the Paris Agreement. None of them eliminate oil and gas by 2050 or over the next 20 to 30 years. So oil and gas is an important part of the solution, and therefore we have to play a role to not only provide that, but do it in a lower emission way. And I'll just highlight 3 areas that we focus on. One, my colleagues have already shared, we have to continue to reduce the emissions intensity of the materials that we produce. So for every drop of oil that society consumes, doing it in a lower emission way year after year after year, because while the world is still consuming oil and gas, we have to do it in a lower emission way. And my colleagues highlighted some amazing programs. Second, we have to help innovate and deploy the solutions that are needed at scale. And going back to the IPCC pathways, of those 700 plus pathways, there is no transition that relies on only one or two solutions. So there is no transition that only relies on nuclear or only relies on solar and wind. It really does take a full suite of solutions, including what we talk about are molecule-driven solutions. So carbon capture to abate emissions, hydrogen, a low-emission way to provide the intense heat that processes need, and bio-based energy sources. But these are all complex molecule solutions where the innovation and the researchers at ExxonMobil, not only are we developing the technology, but we're working to deploy it. We've developed the largest end-to-end carbon capture system, which is helping abate industrial emissions. So think about the emissions from generating steel, fertilizer, industrial gases. So number one, reduce the emissions intensity of production. Number two, drive innovation and scale the solutions. And then the third focus area for us is advocate for policy that can unlock low carbon markets. It's absolutely critical to help these solutions scale. And what I would say what's missing today are emissions accounting systems at the product level. And that point about product level is critical because there's many emission reporting and disclosure systems at an entity level. There are the nationally determined contributions at the country level, which drives target setting and stewarding that reduction. There are voluntary disclosure programs at the company level, and all of these are important, they're needed, but they're typically looking back in history at what has happened. And business is not transacted at the entity level. Business is not transacted at a national level or a country level. It's transacted at the product level. And so if we're going to incentivize low carbon markets and find a way to value that lower emission product, we have to have a robust carbon accounting system at the product level. And that's something that we're focused on. The way I like to describe what that could look like in the future, today businesses transact with a price and a quantity. There's a purchase order or an invoice that has a price and a quantity. And in the future, what we need to get to are these transactions happen at the price, quantity, and emission intensity level. And when we have that system in place, that will enable us to value and incentivize lower emission solutions. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. This is a big challenge, but surely necessary for us to have a better view of really where are the main issues around the carbon and how products are measured with this important part of the value in the future. Unfortunately, we have so few time to complete the discussion, but I want to give you, Dr. Fay, for you to maybe you can make some final comments on what you heard from our fellow members of the panel, and I will finish with your participation.
So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I was taking a few notes here because I like to bring it all together. What I did hear from everyone is this sense of collaboration. I did hear from others that we need to do something soon. Bernardo, I know you mentioned that you gave some stats on reduction since the time started with the emission, doing baselines and the sort, that we've been down almost 60+% since 2017. So thank you for sharing those stats. But I still think there's a bit more to do. Technologies are here. Technologies are still evolving and being made available. It's determining what baselines are of your emissions and getting after reducing those emissions using the various pillars. It's really about how can we all work together, both industry as well as associations, and come up with the solutions working collectively together. There's enough space in this area that we can all have a part of it and work together. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with my colleagues here on the panel as well as others, and looking forward to reducing these emissions.
Thank you very much. I think that we reached the conclusion here. I want to really thank you for participating with us. Thank you for the audience to be with us, and please a round of applause to our panelists.